They said no man crossed the canyon and came back the same. But that morning, 5 of them rode in laughing. Certain legends were just stories made to scare boys. The desert was quiet in a way that felt watchful. The sun still low, shadows long against the stone walls. When the first rider reached the narrow pass, his horse stopped on its own, snorting and backing away. That was when she stepped out of the rock, as if the canyon itself had decided to speak. She stood tall and still, her dark hair tied back, her posture straight as the cliffs behind her. She carried no rifle, no visible weapon meant to impress. Her calm was more unsettling than any threat. The men slowed, exchanging glances, confidence cracking just enough to show fear underneath. Everyone along the border had heard of her. Some called her a ghost, others called her a curse, most called her a wall. The leader tried to smile. He said something careless, something meant to remind her that men decided where roads went and who used them. She did not answer. She only stepped forward once, boots pressing into sand that had not been touched since dawn. In that step was a promise she did not need to explain. When one man reached for her, it was over before the others understood what they were seeing. She moved with a precision that came from years of watching, waiting, surviving. She used balance, momentum, and the land itself. A wrist turned the wrong way, a shoulder met stone. A body hit the ground hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs, not to break him, but to teach him. The others rushed in anger and embarrassment. That was their second mistake. She did not chase. She let them come. Each man fell for the same reason. They underestimated her. Not because she was fast or strong alone, but because she never wasted motion. She fought like someone who had learned that every movement mattered. In moments, 4 of them were on the ground, stunned, dusty, staring up at the sky as if it had betrayed them. The last one froze, torn between pride and survival. She finally spoke then, her voice low and even. She told them the canyon was not theirs. She told them to leave while they could still walk. There was no joy in her words, no cruelty, only certainty. The men gathered themselves and retreated, wounded pride trailing behind them like smoke. Their laughter was gone. So was any thought of returning. She watched until they disappeared beyond the bend. Only then did she allow herself to breathe out slowly. Guarding the canyon was not a role she had chosen for glory. It was a duty given to her because she never failed, because she never needed help, because she never asked. High above, partially hidden by rock and distance, a lone cowboy lowered the binoculars he had been holding. He had seen fights before. He had seen men win by size and by force. What he had just witnessed was different. There was no show in it, no hunger to prove anything. Only control, only resolve. He stayed where he was, knowing better than to announce himself. He had not come to test her or to challenge the stories. He had come because children were sick beyond the far ridge, and the fastest path went straight through her canyon. Still, he did not move. He understood something the other men hadn't. Strength like hers was not impressed by courage alone. It listened first. Below, she sensed him before she saw him. The canyon had taught her how to feel when something did not belong to the wind or the animals. She turned her head slightly, eyes lifting toward the ridge. Their gazes met across the distance. For a moment, nothing else existed. Not the desert, not the fallen men, not the long history written into the stone. He tipped his hat, not as a greeting meant to charm, but as an acknowledgement. He did not step forward. He did not reach for anything. He simply stood, waiting. It was the first time in years a man had looked at her without fear or challenge in his eyes. What unsettled her was that he also did not look away. She turned back toward the canyon entrance, resuming her place as if the moment had not mattered. Yet it stayed with her, heavy and unwelcome. Legends were simple. Walls were supposed to be unchanging, but as the sun climbed higher, she found herself listening, not for intruders, but for footsteps that did not come. By late afternoon, the canyon held heat like a held breath. The woman stood near her fireless camp, sharpening a blade more from habit than need. She sensed him before she saw him, the same calm presence from the ridge earlier, now closer but still careful. When he stepped into view, he did so slowly, hands open, hat in his grip instead of on his head. He stopped well short of the narrow pass. Respecting a line everyone else had tried to cross, she did not turn right away. Silence had always been her first test. Most men filled it with noise. He did not. "I'm not here to fight," he said at last, voice steady, not raised. "And I won't cross unless you allow it." That earned him her attention. She faced him, eyes sharp, measuring. He was not young, not old either. Dust clung to his boots, and his clothes were worn but clean. No swagger, no smile meant to disarm. "Then turn around," she said. "This path is closed." "I can," he replied. "But children on the other side won't last the week if I do." She had heard excuses before. Lost cattle, shortcuts, promises of payment. She waited for the rest. It did not come. "What children?" she asked. "Sick ones," he said simply. "Fever, weak lungs. I carry medicine. The long way around takes too much time." She stepped closer, close enough for him to feel the weight of her presence. "You expect me to believe that?" "No," he said. "I expect you to decide." The answer unsettled her more than anger would have. She circled him once, eyes scanning for weapons. He had a revolver, worn and secured, untouched. A satchel rested at his feet. When she nudged it with her boot, glass clinked softly inside. "Open it," she said. He knelt, slow and deliberate, and opened the bag. Inside were bottles, cloth, tools for tending wounds and illness. The smell was sharp and clean. She had known that smell once. Her gaze caught on something hanging from his neck, half hidden beneath his shirt. A small amulet, smoothed by time and touch. Her breath caught before she could stop it. "Where did you get that?" she asked. He followed her eyes and touched it without thinking. "My grandmother gave it to me. She was a healer, learned from an Apache woman years ago." The canyon seemed to narrow around them. Memories stirred, unwanted. A grandmother of her own, hands steady, voice patient, teaching that strength was meant to protect life, not only borders. She pushed the thought away. "Stories," she said. "Everyone has them." "Then let this one end here," he replied. "I'll wait, or I'll go back, but I won't force my way through." She studied his face, looking for the turn where patience became pressure. It never came. He sat on the ground instead, back straight, eyes lowered. A man willing to wait was dangerous in a different way. He made time an enemy. "You don't fear me," she said. "I respect you," he answered. "Fear makes men stupid." That almost made her smile. Almost. Hours passed. The sun dipped lower. She expected him to grow restless. He didn't. He cleaned his tools. He wrapped a torn strip of cloth. He drank water sparingly, as if used to hard travel. Each quiet action chipped at the certainty she had built around herself. "You could try to pass at night," she said finally. "I could," he agreed. "But I won't." "Why?" "Because trust, once broken, doesn't heal right." The words struck deeper than he could have known. She turned away, anger rising not at him, but at the feeling he stirred. This was supposed to be simple. Guard the canyon, keep threats out. Men were easy to understand when they came with force. This one came with restraint, and it left her unsteady. As darkness settled, she made her choice for the moment. "You'll stay where you are tonight," she said. "At first light, we'll speak again." He nodded, accepting the terms without question. As she walked back toward her post, she told herself this was not a crack in her resolve. It was caution. Yet as she lay awake under the stars, The small image of an amulet kept returning, and with it a question she had not asked in years. What if strength was not being tested by letting him pass, but by deciding whether she could see him clearly at all? The sound came first, low and distant, like thunder trapped underground. Birds lifted from the canyon walls all at once. The woman froze, every instinct sharpened by years of guarding this place. A heartbeat later, the ground shuddered beneath her feet, and stone cracked against stone deep within the narrow passage that led toward her people's camp. She was already running before the noise fully faded. The inner canyon was a place of tight turns and high walls, where sound carried poorly and danger hid without warning. As she reached the bend, dust filled the air, thick and choking. A section of the wall had given way. Rocks the size of wagons lay scattered where the path had been. Beneath them came faint voices, trapped, frightened, alive. Her chest tightened. These were her people. She dropped to her knees, ignoring the sharp sting in her hands as she pushed smaller stones aside. She called out names, listening, counting answers. 2 elders, a young woman, a boy barely old enough to carry water. They were pinned, not crushed, but time mattered. She lifted with all the strength she had, muscles straining as stones scraped and shifted. One rock moved, another didn't. Panic threatened to rise. Hot and useless. This was her duty. She was supposed to be enough. Footsteps sounded behind her. She turned, already braced to shout, but it was the cowboy, breathless, face tight with concern. He took in the scene in seconds. "Who's hurt?" he asked. "Go back," she snapped. "This is not your place." He didn't argue. He knelt beside her, checking gaps, listening for breath. "If we move the wrong stone, it could make things worse," he said calmly. "Let me see." Every part of her resisted. Letting a man take part in this felt like failure. Yet as the boy cried out weakly, a memory surfaced without permission. Her grandmother's voice, firm but gentle, saying that pride had no place where lives were at stake. She stepped back half a pace. It felt like stepping off a cliff. "Tell me what to lift," she said. They worked together without ceremony. He guided her hands, his voice steady, explaining where weight could shift safely. She lifted. He reached through narrow spaces, checking pulse, clearing airways, offering water drop by drop. When the young woman began to fade, he spoke to her softly, keeping her focused, keeping her here. In the middle of it, the emotional weight hit her harder than the stones ever could. She realized she trusted him, not because he was kind, not because he was careful, but because he never tried to take control from her. He treated her strength as essential, not something to overcome. When the last rock was moved and the path cleared, the elders were helped to their feet. The boy was breathing easier. Dust settled. Relief came in a wave that left her unsteady. At the camp, word spread fast. Faces appeared from shelters, wary at first, then curious. The cowboy did not stand apart. He worked, he cleaned wounds, he prepared medicine with practiced hands. When someone questioned him, he answered plainly and went back to helping. An elder approached the woman quietly. "You allowed him," he said, not accusing, just stating truth. "I chose what saved them," she replied. That night, as fires burned low, she watched the cowboy from across the camp. He looked exhausted, shoulders heavy, yet he stayed awake, checking on the weak, adjusting blankets, listening. The image of men as threats, fixed and solid for so long, cracked further. Later, he sat alone, cleaning his tools. She joined him without speaking. After a moment, he said, "You could have sent me away." "Yes," she answered, "but you didn't." She considered the firelight, the faces of her people resting nearby. "Strength is lifting stone," she said slowly. But today, strength was choosing not to stand alone. He looked at her then, really looked, not with gratitude or triumph, but with something quieter: understanding. By morning, the tribe no longer questioned his presence. He was not one of them, but he was no longer outside the circle. And for the first time since she had become the wall, the woman wondered if guarding the canyon had never been about keeping others out, but about knowing when to let someone stand beside her when the ground began to break. Morning came with a pale sky and a long decision already made. The woman tightened the straps of her pack and stepped away from the camp without calling attention to herself. She had guarded borders her whole life. Now she was crossing one of her own. When the cowboy saw her preparing, he did not ask why. He only nodded and adjusted his load, as if this had always been the plan. They moved into the hidden trails before the sun climbed high. The path was narrow and uneven, known only to those raised with the land. She led without looking back, setting a pace meant to test him. Loose rock shifted underfoot. Wind pressed through the pass. She listened for signs of struggle behind her. There were none. He followed carefully, not trying to match her stride, but not falling behind either. By midday, heat bore down hard. They stopped near a trickle of water hidden between stones. She drank first, then handed him the container without ceremony. He took only what he needed and returned it. Small things, she noticed. He wasted nothing. Not effort. Not words. As the trail climbed, danger grew quiet and constant. A wrong step meant a long fall. When his boot slipped once, she caught his arm without thinking. He regained balance and thanked her simply. No jokes. No wounded pride. The moment stayed with her longer than she expected. They walked for hours in silence broken only by wind and breath. When they finally rested, the weight she carried pressed heavier than her pack. She had chosen to leave the canyon unguarded, even for a short time. Duty pulled at her like a rope tied tight around the chest. "You can turn back," she said, staring ahead. "I know this land. You don't." "If I turn back," he replied, "the medicine won't reach the children." "That's not what I meant," she said. He understood anyway. "I won't ask you to give up who you are." That answer eased something she hadn't named. As night fell, cold crept in fast. They built a small fire shielded by rock. She watched the flames while memories surfaced, slow and unwanted. Nights spent alone on watch. Strength praised. Loneliness ignored. She had believed solitude was proof of worth. "You never talk about yourself," she said suddenly. "There's not much to say," he answered. "I go where I'm needed. I leave when I'm not." She nodded, then surprised herself by speaking again. "I was taught that needing others made you weak." "And what do you think now?" he asked. She stared at the fire. "I think it made me tired." The admission felt risky, like setting down armor she had worn too long. He did not rush to respond. He only listened. That mattered. The next day tested them harder. The trail narrowed into a steep pass where wind cut sharp and cold. Clouds rolled in without warning. Visibility dropped. She hesitated for the first time, unsure whether to press on or wait. Children waited somewhere beyond this ridge. So did her responsibilities behind her. She made the choice. Forward. They moved slowly, watching each step. When she misjudged a ledge and slid, he reached her, anchoring her weight with steady strength. For a brief second, she depended fully on him. The realization struck deep. He did not comment on it. He simply held until she was safe. Later, as the storm eased, they rested in a shallow cave. The silence between them felt different now, less guarded. She spoke again, voice low. "Being strong kept me alive, but it also kept everyone at a distance." He met her eyes. "Walking beside someone doesn't take strength away. It shares the weight." The words stayed with her as they descended toward the valley. By the time the land opened and the path grew kinder, something inside her had shifted. She had not lost herself by choosing this journey. She had learned that strength did not vanish when shared. As the settlement came into view in the distance, She understood the journey had already changed more than the path ahead. Whatever waited for them beyond the ridge, she would face it not as a wall standing alone, but as someone willing to walk beside another without fear of losing who she was. By the time they reached the settlement, the sun was already leaning west, casting long shadows across the simple buildings. The air carried the sound of coughing and low voices, tired and worried. Children lay wrapped in thin blankets, faces pale, eyes too bright with fever. The woman slowed her steps, taking in the scene with a steady gaze. She had guarded lives before, but from a distance. This was different. This was the cost of time and fear made visible. The cowboy moved at once. He knelt beside the first child, checking breathing, speaking softly to calm both the child and the mother nearby. He unpacked his satchel with care, laying out bottles and tools as if arranging order in the middle of chaos. The woman stood close, watching, ready to act. When water was needed, she brought it. When space was required, she cleared it with a single look. They did not speak much. They did not need to. Hours passed. The work was slow and careful. Some children slept more easily. Some breathed with less strain. Hope did not arrive all at once. It came in small signs: a steady breath, a relaxed hand, a mother's shoulders lowering for the first time in days. One child reached out and caught the woman's fingers. The grip was weak, but trusting. She froze, unsure, then stayed. She realized then that strength had many forms, and this one did not ask her to fight. As evening settled, the worst of the sickness eased. The cowboy leaned back against a post, exhausted. The woman handed him water. Their eyes met, and in that look was shared effort, not victory. When it was done, they did not linger. At dawn, they turned back toward the mountains. The return journey felt shorter, though no easier. The woman walked with a different awareness now. She was not retreating from duty. She was carrying something new with it. The tribe gathered as they approached the canyon. Elders stepped forward, faces lined with concern and curiosity. The woman stood before them, shoulders square, the cowboy at her side. No one spoke at first. She broke the silence. "I remain the guardian of the canyon," she said clearly. "That does not change." Murmurs rippled through the group. "But I will no longer stand alone," she continued. "Strength does not mean isolation. It means knowing when to allow help that honors our lives." Some looked at the cowboy with caution, others with gratitude. An elder nodded slowly. "You protected the people," he said, "and you protected yourself." The cowboy shifted, uncomfortable with attention. "I'll stay nearby," he said. "Close enough to help, far enough to respect your ways." That balance mattered. She met his gaze, a small, honest smile touching her face. Not a promise of something named, but of something shared. Days later, the canyon returned to its quiet watchfulness. She took her place as she always had, eyes on the land, senses open. But now when she scanned the ridges, she knew he was there, not as a challenge, not as a shadow over her strength, but as someone walking his own path alongside hers. Travelers still spoke of the woman who was a wall, yet some added new words. They said the canyon was guarded by more than stone and fear. It was guarded by choice. At dusk, as the sky burned red and gold, she stood at the edge of the pass and listened to the wind move through the rocks. For the first time in years, the silence did not feel empty. It felt full of possibility, as if the land itself was waiting to see what kind of strength would rise when two people chose to walk forward, together.